aren't Nell?
Before we start, I just want to let you know that this episode contains strong language.
Keine Titel verraten. Meine Damen und Herren, ich bitte um Ihre Aufmerksamkeit und einen großen Empfangsapplaus für die Pink Singers.
You're listening to Sing It Pink, the story of the Pink Singers, London and Europe's oldest LGBTQ+ choir. I'm Hsien, a tenor, and for episode 5, I'll be your guide.
Label your suitcases. Flight is British Airways BA 650. Meet at check-in desk at Heathrow, 7:15 a.m. so we can check in together.
It's June 1987, and the Pink Singers are on their way to Sweden for their first ever international performance. The excitement is palpable as the choir drag their suitcases and Pink Singers travel guides along with them.
Don't forget your passport, money, plane ticket, white shirts, bow ties, and Pink Singers music. We arrive in Sweden at 12:20 p.m. We're being met at the airport and then whisked to leave our luggage. Ensure your Pink Singers stuff is to hand so it won't take too long to gather it. And then we'll take to the theatre to eat and practice.
Amongst the choir members travelling to Stockholm was Sandy Wilson.
Stockholm Festival was at the Zondra Theatre, and we arrived and were well looked after by the Stockholm Choir. It was an experience. We were the smallest of the choirs that took part. At that time it was the Traviatas from Cologne, Notan de Man from Amsterdam, the Stockholm Gay Men's Chorus, and there was ourselves.
The European Gay Festival of Song, which later became known as the European Festival of Lesbian and Gay Choruses, had formed in 1985 in Cologne. Now, in 1987, the Pink Singers had been invited to its third installment in Stockholm.
It was just an incredible time. We wandered around in Stockholm. We were taken to all sorts of places. It was a beautiful weekend.
Along with the German, Swedish, and Dutch choirs, the Pink Singers took to the stage.
Glad to Be Gay was the final song that we sang. The people in Stockholm that we spoke to said that we were like an elemental force, which was a nice way of singing. We were dreadful as singers, but we had something.
Strengthening our communities, leading the way, so we can really sing out. We're glad to be gay.
A year later, in 1988, the Pink Singers were back for the same festival. And this time, it was taking place in Berlin. In the same year, Thatcher's Section 28 had come into effect, banning public bodies like schools from promoting homosexuality. Though the festival in Berlin was wonderful, the European choirs were aware of this new law in the UK. And to support the Pink Singers, they said, next year, in 1989, we will come to you in London.
The choruses of this festival have unanimously agreed to plan the next festival in London to give the Iron Lady the appropriate answer to her discriminatory policies.
The Pink Singers were still a very small choir, And so they fundraised for the 4-day festival with great gusto. They sought financial support from celebrity patrons and rustled up accommodation for the 300 festival participants who were landing in London. They booked the Hackney Empire for the first 3 nights and Sadler's Wells for the 4th night.
And then on the Sunday night, the 15th of May, we teamed up with the Terence Higgins Trust, because we've been doing charity events for them, said, can you help us put on a big show at Sadler's Wells to raise money for you? And that's what happened.
After all the individual choirs had delivered their own performances, they gathered on the Sadler's Wells stage to sing a final song together. It was the famous war song, We'll Meet Again, from 1939, originally composed and written by Ross Parker and Hughie Charles, and performed by Vera Lynn.
The whole theatre, including the audience, because everybody knows that song, got up and sang it. And that was a very moving moment. The choirs had come over to do this festival because they wanted to support us against the government's law, Section 28. So you had all these German choirs, there were Dutch choirs, there were women's choirs from Stockholm. So we were there supporting each other and singing a song like that, which for many people, both English and German, because of course it was an Allied song that we were singing, the irony that the German choirs, of which we're in the majority, singing that, there was something about that just, it was, I mean, we sang it other nights as well, but on this particular Friday, because we were all there, and the theatre was packed, there was standing room in fact, that suddenly we all sang as one.
Inspired by their successes in Europe, the Pink Singers wanted to take on America. In 1990, they ventured to Florida and became the first ever lesbian and gay choir from Europe to perform in the States.
We took over men and women from London, a number who couldn't afford it. We managed to cobble together the money to pay for them to go over. And over there, we had a lovely time associating with the Gay Men's Chorus of South Florida.
Sandy Wilson had met Gary Keating, the MD of the South Florida Gay Men's Chorus, sometime earlier. He'd invited the Pinkies to perform with them for Health Crisis Network, an organization he was associated with.
We sang a small concert for the Health Crisis Network, which was an organisation looking after people with AIDS and HIV in Miami for users and the people in the worked for the organisation.
Speaking in 2013, Philip Riscola remembered this performance.
And the evening we did it was normally the evening in which they did counselling sessions. And they'd had to cancel the counselling sessions for our concert. And it was because it wasn't because it was Miami. A lot of the Latino community, a lot of the black community also had HIV. A lot of the children had HIV. So we had an incredibly mixed audience, including, I would say, about 20 or 30 children. And we went down a storm. In fact, we had to do encores. And afterwards, I said to the guy who'd organised, I said, I'm really sorry that, we actually came and took away your evening for counselling. He said, this is twice as important as this is counselling, he said. This has made such a difference. So that was really, so that was quite a moving event to do because it was such a diverse audience.
The Pink Singers then joined up with Gala. They visited Denver in 1992. Philip remembers attending the festival.
We went to Denver in 1992. The Americans have an organisation called the Gay and Lesbian Association of Choruses, which is there. They have hundreds more choirs in America. And we went to Denver, and the Denver Lesbian and Gay Choir did a song called "In This Very Room," which they signed. And it was, "In this very room, there's quite enough love for all the world. In this very room, there's quite enough love for all of us. in this very room there's quite enough love for you and me. And all this was being signed. And it was almost like a hymn. And there were people getting tissues and passing them along the road. It wasn't just the song, it was a song, and those words in this very room, in this big theatre, there's enough for all the world. It was the fact that it was also being signed, and the signing is beautiful. The whole choir, there were 80 of them.
In 1996, the choir visited Gala in Tampa. Fundamentalist groups such as the American Family Association and Take Back Tampa were threatening LGBTQ+ rights in the city and across the state of Florida. The Pink Singers and other festival participants marched with and sang alongside the small Tampa gay community in their pride protest. These early trips to Gala marked the start of the Pink Singers' long-standing involvement with the festival and a continuation of the choir's work to support as many diverse, international LGBTQ+ communities as possible. Throughout the mid and late 90s, the Pink Singers had many more international adventures, singing in Zurich, Groningen, Washington, Munich, Paris, Geneva, and San Jose. And though it wasn't overseas, at the end of 1999, on the cusp of the year 2000, as Millennium Fever swept the nation, the Pinkies made another trip. But this time, it was onto TV screens.
The sun will come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun. Just thinking about tomorrow clears away the cobwebs and the sorrow till there's none.
As you can hear, Gimme 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 was an absolutely raucous sitcom, centered around the loudmouth Londoner Linda LaHughes, as played by the comedian Kathy Burke. For the special Millennium episode, broadcast on BBC Two on the 29th of December 1999, the show asked the Pink Singers to come on and sing Tomorrow from the musical Annie, as originally written by Charles Strauss and Martin Charnin and published in 1977. The Pink Singers had never sung Tomorrow before, and upon arriving at the studio, they only had time for a quick run-through. They kept forgetting their words, losing time, and standing in the wrong places. The producers looked incredibly worried. But there was no time for more rehearsals. They had to record. The Pinkies gathered backstage, hiding behind the set, and then... They ran onto the stage at the end of the episode, waving their arms, dancing and singing.
Tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, you're always a day away. The sun will come out tomorrow, so you gotta hang on till tomorrow. Come on, May. Tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, you're always a day away.
The Pinkies were all dressed in bright pink shirts, with glitter flying in all directions and massive pink balloons appearing from the sky. What a way to welcome in the next 1,000 years. As the new millennium got underway, the choir also welcomed some fresh faces.
So I was definitely newly out at that point, and so it was all a bit like, okay, lots of gay people in a room.
Lynn joined the Pinkies in September 2000. She decided to move away from her family home in Yorkshire in search of some personal freedom.
I came to London and that was it. So yeah, and that enabled me to be myself for lots of different reasons. I'd been a young carer, so it enabled me to be a teenager, I guess, in that sense. It enabled me to kind of find who I was. I had a whole thing where I had to break away from organised religion so that I could accept who I was and realise that I am brilliantly born the way I was. And so that was kind of a big sort of stepping period.
Though Lynn was grateful for some of the values she felt her religious upbringing had instilled in her, providing service to others and being part of a community, she wanted space away from it all to explore her sexuality. She also wanted to sing, and the Pinkies provided the opportunity to do both.
So I'd always sung religious songs, I guess, because that's what had been in church. And then joining the Pinkies was really interesting because it opened me up to so much different music that I would never have come across before.
Lynn was around 21, and though she was nervous, newly out, and still learning more about herself, she settled right in with the Pink Singers and got involved with an away trip to the European Festival of Lesbian and Gay Choruses, which had been renamed as the more inclusive Various Voices.
I was a student at the time and they had bursaries, which meant I was able to go, which was brilliant. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to go along to do that. So actually, I got to see loads of the UK and Europe through the choir, which I probably wouldn't have done in other ways.
This was just the start for Lynn. Next up, there was a trip to Paris, and then to Helsinki, which led to a very different cultural experience in a nightclub.
So this club, as you walked in, you went down masses of stairs, and then there was like a dance floor, which was like where the bar was. That was all very normal. That's what you expect in a club. Then, just as part of the nightclub, there was a sauna. And we're all a bit like, okay. So is it an actual sauna where you go in sauna, or is it something else? And it was an actual sauna, so that was good. And so I really wanted to sauna, but I was the only woman that wanted to go and do the sauna with all the blokes. And in Finland, you do it naked as well, just to put this in context. And we kind of all traipse into the sauna. I'm pretty much kind of trying to cover the relevant pieces of my anatomy as we go into the sauna, which is dark, which is good. And then we sit in there and they say, this is how you do a Finnish sauna. You either have it in silence or you sing. And then I just remember this really just peaceful moment. We were singing On Suri Surantas Autuas with all these Finnish blokes and some of our choir members. So it was one of those nights where you just like, okay, this is quite special.
Though Lynn loved singing with just the Pink Singers, it was these moments where choirs and cultures join together that really stand out in her memory.
It was just that sense of being with other people that like you, but also different to you, and learning that, you know, every culture has LGBT plus people in, because you kind of realise it, but to see it is a very different matter. And also that there was this one thing that bound us across the world, and that was singing.
It's been a while since I introduced myself, so let me do so again. I'm Hsien, a tenor, and I joined the Pink Singers in 2002, just 2 years after Lynn. I hadn't always lived in London. I was born in Singapore in 1972. As I grew up, I learned that society in Singapore tends to place value on doing well in academia, sports, the arts, or something extracurricular. So if you work hard and excel, then generally you're given a seal of approval. At school, I did all of these things. I was a house leader, I organized lots of social events, I was involved in theatre and singing with the choir, and I received good grades. But there was something about me that did not fit in the mold of what society would deem excellent. I'd never related to any of the boy meets girl love stories on TV. And as I got older, I realized I was attracted to men. Consenting sex between two men was illegal in Singapore under Section 377A, which was derived from an original law formed by the British Empire, Section 377. Under this law, the police often conducted raids. Anyone discovered to be guilty of being gay sometimes found their photos published in the newspaper. It was 1987, and it was a fairly terrifying time to be a closeted 15-year-old. I moved to London in 1993 and studied to become a doctor. Though my understanding of LGBTQ+ life had expanded with this move to a more open place, I spent my first few years in the UK living relatively conservatively. I wasn't closeted, but I viewed my sexuality as just one part of me, one segment. A segment that lived in isolation, rarely crossing over into other aspects of my everyday life. But when I joined the Pink Singers in 2002, I was introduced to so many queer people who identified in a multitude of ways. I learned so much and began to fully accept my queerness as something that influenced my whole self, my work, my relationships, my complete existence. Being a Pinky had such a positive effect on me, and in 2011, I wanted to share this experience with others and bring LGBTQ+ choirs together. So, I founded Proud Voices, a network of LGBTQ+ choirs across the UK and Ireland. When the Pink Singers turned 30 in 2013, we hosted a huge festival in celebration. Most of the choirs from Proud Voices came to join us, and it was an amazing event. We called it the Hand in Hand Festival.
Watch now as we start singing 2 parts, now 3 parts, now 4 parts, now 6 parts, now 8 parts. Listen to us singing 8 parts. Pretty fucking cool, right? Pretty fucking cool.
Around this time, I thought back to my life in Singapore. I wish that this experience had existed for me when I was living there, and for the generations that followed me. It made me wonder, were there any LGBTQ+ choirs in Singapore? A friend told me that there was, but in a very under-the-radar way. Being gay was still illegal in Singapore under Section 377A. I managed to get in touch with this secret choir. And I also made contact with other LGBTQ+ choirs in Beijing, Taipei, Japan, and South Korea. None of these groups knew that each other existed. But once we found a way for them to connect, they formed a new network, Proud Voices Asia. In 2014, the choirs of Proud Voices Asia traveled to Dublin to sing alongside many of the choirs in Proud Voices UK and Ireland. It was a truly special moment, and one that I was so proud to have played a role in organising. In the years that followed, I started looking for LGBTQ+ choirs in India. But this was tricky, as India was also living under the rule of Section 377. You see, this law was introduced by the British Empire during colonial rule. It criminalised sex against the order of nature. Though it didn't mention homosexuality, it was used to prosecute gay people.
Section 377. Unnatural offences. Whoever voluntarily has carnal intercourse against the order of nature with any man, woman, or animal shall be punished with imprisonment for life, or with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years, and shall also be liable to fine.
Whilst I was conducting my search for LGBTQ plus choirs in India, I discovered a group called Rainbow Voices and reached out to their founder, Vinod.
We didn't know that there was this person called Hsien who had formed Proud Voices Asia, and he was always scouting on the internet for newly formed choirs. And Hsien spotted us. And we got this email saying, would you like to be part of Proud Voices Asia? We are a network of LGBT choirs in Asia. And we were thinking, oh my God. So this is something, how the fish did they find us? And so that got us plugged into the Asian LGBT choral circuit.
Vinod grew up in Chennai, a city in the south of India. His family were very religious, and he discovered his love of singing through church.
There are lots of singers and musicians in the family. So I started singing when I was 4 in the church choir, when I couldn't even read. So that's how my singing thing started. When it came to singing, I could just, I just forget about everything around me.
Vinod had always known he was gay, but he was unable to tell his family and friends. He kept a long-term relationship a secret, but when his partner married a woman, the relationship ended. Vinod considered doing the same thing.
Pressure, especially in India, to get married. At that time, I probably thought, oh no, this has ended. So now what do I do? Do I just go and, because he's married a girl, do I also go and marry a girl? Is that is that how it's got to be? And it just didn't feel right.
Instead, Vinod jumped into the hidden gay online dating world. He made a few new acquaintances who mostly became good friends. They showed Vinod the sights and sounds of his local underground gayborhood.
That was a wonderful time. But of course, everything closeted, everything undercover.
After making these new friends, Vinod had to move to Mumbai for work. Without a choir, without singing, Vinod was bereft. He went looking for a community and met some new gay people in Mumbai. Specifically, a friend called Sibi, who was very involved with local gay organizations. Sibi suggested that Vinod start his own choir, an LGBTQ plus choir, the first ever LGBTQ plus choir in India.
Then he said, well, why don't you start one? And I was like, what? But that played in my head. And then I called him and then I said, okay, Sibi, let's start an LGBT choir. And then he called for auditions. It was just before the monsoon, so at the end of the summer 2014.
Mumbai was hot and steamy, just before the first rains. So mangoes were still plentiful, and the air was thick. The choir was going to be called Rainbow Voices, and it was time for the first auditions to begin.
Well, I was a bit nervous because I had never done this before in my life. But when we called for auditions, you won't believe it, we thought we'll have just 2 or 3 and we'll probably form a Rainbow Voices quartet or something. But we had more than 20 people land up. And that was really surprising. So later on, when we were having tea and samosas, we were talking about it, and we were saying that, which also means there seems to be a need for it, as in, so there seems to be a crowd that wants to sing and wants to be a part of an LGBT choir.
Though Vinod had held auditions for these many keen singers, he wasn't able to turn anybody away.
Everyone who came and sang, I could feel that they had prepared for it, and it was all coming from the heart. I could never, as in, you can't refuse someone, who's put in all that effort, who's making that effort, as in, you can always train voices.
Rainbow Voices was born. But under Section 377, they still needed to be very careful.
We also told people, well, if you didn't want to be visible, wear heavy makeup or wear a mask, because that itself is also a message, or just wear a brown bag with a message written on it. Just to say that I have a talent, I have this platform, I can showcase my talent, but you won't know who I am because this bloody Victorian law stops me from doing it. A couple of our Rainbow Voices have said, you know what? All my life, through school, through college, working career, etc., I have never got on stage ever and held a microphone in my hand or been on stage in front of an audience. And I can't believe that I'm doing that now because I've joined this choir. And that really makes me feel like I'm doing something. I think it gave them a lot of confidence to be out there and be part of that movement, and that they could be involved with the community.
As I talked with Vinod about Rainbow Voices becoming a part of Proud Voices Asia, I also asked if they would like to collaborate with the Pink Singers. The Pink Singers wanted to sing alongside Rainbow Voices, to stand up against Section 377, just as those European choirs had sung with us during the times of Section 28.
We're going to be marching hand in hand together tomorrow at Pride in Mumbai, which is going to be fantastic, we know. Yes, absolutely.
We organised a joint concert and marched with Rainbow Voices at Pride in Mumbai, an event called Queer Azadi.
We just sang through all that turmoil. We sang through jubilation. We sang through trials and tribulations, and we sang through protests, and that was our message and our method. We'd make music our war cry, music our celebration, and music our protest or defiance. Also, it was that liaison with the Pink Singers that also helped us, gave us that confidence to say that, all right, you know what? Don't be afraid. Just be yourself. And there's this bigger family all over the world that is there to support you. And you're not alone. So it started off with Proud Voices Asia, and then with the Pink Singers, and then, and then you started thinking more globally than just, Mumbai and, India or whatever. So I think that was a huge thing that happened for all of us.
The relationship between the Pink Singers and Rainbow Voices didn't end there.
To help this cause in India, the Pinkies have been kind enough to invite Rainbow Voices to sing at this year's London Pride. We shall overcome.
We got invited back to London the same year to walk the London Pride, and it was a wonderful experience. And there were some of the Rainbow Voices who for their first time stepped on a flight, and things like that. So a lot of firsts, and I still remember one of our Rainbow Voices saying, my first 10 days or how many days they stayed there, of freedom, where he could just be himself, not be bothered that, if I walked a certain way, or if I were a bit whatever, camp or not, or whatever, that someone's going to come and arrest me or harass me or bully me. And I think that gave that gave something to all of the Rainbow Voices who were able to travel. It gave them something to remember, and to remember for a lifetime, actually.
Together, the Pink Singers and Rainbow Voices sang We Shall Overcome, a simple but powerful protest song known for its association with the US civil rights movement and other freedom movements around the world. A year after the collaboration between Rainbow Voices and the Pink Singers, the Supreme Court of India repealed Section 377 in 2018. Singapore followed suit in 2022. Ever since its formation in 1983, activism has been an integral part of the Pink Singers' mission. For over 40 years, we've been singing together at protests, marches, and concerts around the globe, and we will continue to do so. Fighting and advocating for LGBTQ+ people across the world remains at the core of the Pink Singers' mission to this day. In our end-of-year concert, we'll be collaborating with Poland's first-ever LGBTQ+ choir, Voces Gaudi. In recent years in Poland, LGBTQ+ rights, women's rights, and reproductive rights have been affected by increasingly extreme conservative values. We'll be standing against the infringements of these rights and singing alongside Voces Gaudi. That's in the coming episodes. Next time on Sing It Pink.
One night we were going to the pub, and we got as far as a shop about 100 metres from the pub, and a circle of lads around us throwing things and jeering and shouting us, all sorts of abuse about us being trans. And we just pulled out our cameras and started taking photos.
Sing It Pink, the story of the Pink Singers, is an Aunt Nell production. It was made possible by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. The presenter of episode 5 was Hsien Chew. The archive was voiced by Annie Ring and Will Paxton. The producer was Rachel Byrne. The assistant producer was Marnie Woodmeade. The executive producers were Tash Walker and Adam Zmith. The executive producer for the Pink Singers was Chris Scales. Audio mix was by David Pye. Special thanks to Vinod Phillips, Lynn Nichols, Sandy Wilson, Rainbow Voices Mumbai, the Pink Singers, and Acast Studios.